Right. Are you ready?
Ready?
Okay. So, obviously, the story has been a little different from what we've done in the past, especially for cover stories in print. Can you just tell me how you initially came across this story?
Well, it came in the way most stories come in. We got an email with some court documents, and our reporters were too busy to take it on that day. So I thought, all right, I'll go ahead and write it up real quick. Took, I don't know, an hour or so, wrote it, posted it, moved on. Used to doing that kind of thing and kind of didn't think anything else of it. And all of a sudden, my phone started blowing up. I started getting a ton of emails, and we realized this was a much bigger story than we initially thought it would be.
Yeah. So let's just get into it. Tell me about Wendy.
Wendy went to see Dr. Gupta at Advanced Pain Treatment Center in Edgewood in 2021. She heard about him the way a lot of people hear about doctors, and that was through word of mouth. She had some friends that told her about him, and she was told he was a good doctor. So Wendy told me she is not a fan of going to the doctor. She does not like to be on pain medication, but she finally decided that she was at a dead end, so she decided to go. Unfortunately, this is not the only person we've heard of who has gone to this clinic, and we heard from another former patient and two former employees who told us about a lot of things they had experienced at this clinic that they wish they hadn't.
But I was working full time when I went there. And it just went downhill from the moment I went. So by having DJ, a non-certified person, in the room and having him sedate me and having him do x-rays, and not only that, he stood there and asked Dr. Gupta in his chair. Gupta was sitting in his chair, and DJ had the needle and asked him, how much do I give her? Draw up out of that syringe bottle. He had everything, and Gupta said exactly how much. How how do I trust? How do I trust another doctor? How do I how do I know what to believe? Because he done x-rays and didn't tell me stuff that was on the x-ray that I should have been told. And I feel like I'm in worse pain than what I was when I went there. And like falling, other embarrassing moments, bruising, memory. Like I said, I was working a lot, and now I'm disabled, fully disabled, and he encouraged that. He's not a person who I would trust ever around somebody. I'm sorry.
Several people reached out to us after a story we ran in June that outlined the Kentucky Board of Medical Licensure's agreement with Gupta that his medical license was restricted indefinitely in Kentucky, so he could no longer practice medicine in the state unless otherwise told by the board. That was all based on a consultant's opinion that Gupta allowed Thomas to perform medical procedures without proper certification. Procedures like placing IVs and administering anesthesia. Gupta's attorney said that Philhart signed consent forms acknowledging there are no guaranteed results for the procedures she underwent. But Philhart and others who spoke to us described a clinic overrun with patients, a doctor who did not like to be questioned, and an office manager, DJ Thomas, who performed certain medical procedures without the legal ability to do so. What we found out is that the law, or more specifically what the law does not say, is really at the heart of this story.
My name is Lauren.
Okay. And what relation did you have to the practice of Dr. Gupta?
I was hired as a quote unquote medical assistant.
Okay. When was this?
This was in 2021, towards the end of the year.
How long did you work there?
Around 3 weeks, if that.
And why?
My first week, I thought, maybe this is my first job, like in a medical setting. Maybe I'm just not used to it. And then within the first week, and then by week 2, I just knew that, okay, something's not right. This isn't good. There's things going on here that shouldn't be going on. And I know that just from being in like nursing clinicals. The more I'm kind of looking around and talking, I'm noticing, there's no real like hand sanitizer. There's no soaps in the bathroom. There's kind of just clutter everywhere. Like it was just dirty and gross, and I wanted to get in there and clean. There were things that weren't kept where they should be. There were just bedside drawers that were, looked like they got them at a yard sale. They were all different ones, and they were just full of just needles, bags of saline, lines, anything that you needed to just rig anything up. Like it was just in there available. Nothing was locked. And I just thought it was odd. But, I was younger and I thought that, okay, well, maybe this is just his private practice, that this is the way that he does things. When I was there, I had to do IVs and I had experience doing it. So I was confident in myself. I said, okay. And anytime that I can't get an IV in somebody, it's 2 times for me. And then, the doctor needs to come do it. Doesn't wash his hands, doesn't put gloves on, doesn't, get an alcohol prep wipe and clean this lady's, arm off. And I'm just standing back there, just watching, like just not saying anything. And, just grabs the needle, no gloves on still, just pops it in there, doesn't clean any ports off on the line, doesn't clean anything off. Just sticks it in her arm, puts piece of tape over it, sets it up, gets the saline going, and then just like walks away. There were blood stains on the pillows, iodine stains on things. There was just holes, blood, and I'd be washing this stuff, and I understand like those things happen, but usually when those things happen, if you can't fix them, then they get thrown away. Because I was just washing stuff in just a normal in your house washer and dryer, and I would go to throw stuff away. Like I would just stack things up in a corner, throw them away. And it was like, I was told it wasn't my decision. It wasn't my decision or my choice about when things needed to be thrown away.
You were told by whom?
Dr. Gupta. It wasn't my call to make. And I'm like, it's just not sanitary. For as much money as this guy makes, that you'd think I'd be able to pay for cleaning or, pay the staff like to come in and really deep clean. There was no biohazard containers for stuff. Like there'd just be bloody lines and bloody gauze just sitting in there, uncapped needles.
Did you talk to Dr. Gupta about this?
I brought it up to DJ, who would, bring things up to Dr. Gupta, because Dr. Gupta to him was a very busy man and he did not have a lot of time.
And what did DJ tell you?
DJ said, Dr. Gupta said he'll handle it. Just work on what you need to be doing. Focus on the patients. I'm like, well, I am focusing on the patients, because these people don't need to be sitting in these dirty beds. Like these people don't need to be going in for sterile procedures and laying on a pillow that has bloodstains on it. It's dirty. I'm like, if I wouldn't lay in it, I wouldn't want someone else to lay in it.
At a state and even national level, the stories these former patients and employees shared with Link highlight a medical system that can be difficult to navigate, along with laws and regulations that change from state to state, making patients' ability to understand the full scope of their provider's history a challenge. So Kenton County Commonwealth Attorney Rob Sanders expressed frustration with the communication of the medical board to him. He said that he had no idea that Dr. Gupta even existed until he saw Link's story, and then asked for the full investigation from the board. But it wasn't until after we sat down with these people that we realized that everyone who had worked in the clinic or been seen by this doctor, they had more questions than answers. They didn't know anything about the laws surrounding pain clinics in Kentucky. They really didn't understand whether the people who were treating them had the proper licensure or training to do so. And they also didn't know if they had any recourse or exactly how they should move forward if they felt like they weren't treated properly inside this clinic. The board oversees licensure and not criminal conduct, so if Gupta were to be criminally charged, that would have to be done through the courts. That has not happened, but attorney Judd Ewell, who is representing Gupta, Thomas, and Advanced Pain Treatment Center in the case Phil Hart brought against them, said he isn't sure what the criminal charges would be. Ewell also said he could not allow Gupta to sit down for an interview because of the ongoing litigation.
So what's Yule's stance on all this?
His stance is that his client didn't do anything wrong because he oversaw everything that Thomas did. And also he said that Wendy was not injured. And because of that, he's not sure what a criminal case or any criminal charges would be against his client. So as we were researching the law to learn more about this story and licensure for doctors in the United States, we found out that there is a database that has some information when it comes to whether or not doctors have been disciplined in other states. But that database is only accessible for people who are in the medical profession or hospitals. It's not available to the public. So essentially, if a patient wants to know whether or not their doctor has been disciplined in another state, they have to check each state's website separately. ProPublica did they gathered all of these websites together in an article that we'll have on our website for people to look at that makes that a little bit easier, but you still have to check each state's website separately.
Seems needlessly complicated.
Absolutely. It's definitely difficult for patients to figure it out themselves. So while the consultant who worked with the Kentucky Board of Medical Licensure ahead of the June agreement with Gupta determined that Thomas practicing medicine under Gupta's supervision posed an immediate threat to the safety and health of citizens of Kentucky, and that the board and Gupta agreed that he shall not perform any act which would constitute the practice of medicine in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, Gupta is free to practice medicine in any other state where he is licensed, other than in Kentucky. As for Thomas, the board that oversees Gupta does not have jurisdiction over any discipline because, according to Donald A. Balassa, who is the CEO and House Legal Counsel for the American Association of Medical Assistants, licensure for medical assistants does not exist under Kentucky law. The response does not specifically say whether the law addresses the administration of IVs or anesthesia, or that Thomas did or did not place or administer medication through an IV. Balassa said that is the key. That's because even in accredited medical assisting programs, Balassa told Link NKY, IV theory and technique are not taught, meaning medical assistants are not properly trained to do so.
What does DJ have that is making people overlook that he harmed somebody? That he's not being held accountable for his actions, not only to me, how many other people?
My mom had shingles, and she had pain, had it for months. And she was being treated by another doctor, but she didn't feel like it was helping. So they decided to go to see Dr. Gupta. First visit, he looked at her and everything and said, well, we can do a guided ultrasound in order to treat the shingles. So they came back on July 10th, 2019. They had my mom prepped and everything, took her back. Wasn't 5 minutes later, we heard a code. The code was my mom, because they pierced her lung, which is called a pneumothorax. And they brought her back. It wasn't Dr. Gupta that brought her back. It was another gentleman and a woman. I don't know their names.
Okay.
But her face was red. She couldn't breathe.
Okay, so Dr. Gupta told you had to take her to the hospital?
Yeah, they told us that we had to take her to the hospital. And that's when my dad said what he said. And then they ended up calling 911. We got her up to the hospital where Mom was treated. And they did all the tests and everything, and they seen that it was a collapsed lung. So they ended up putting a chest tube in her. And they just kept working on her. We really thought we were going to lose her then. She ended up being bedridden after that. She was in the hospital for 16, 20 days.
Wow.
She would go to the store. She would go gambling and everything. She was driving. But after this, my mom didn't do nothing.
How do you feel about the Kentucky Medical Board and its investigation of him? Do you think they did everything correctly there?
I mean, it's just starting, really. I mean, but he's going to California. He's going to hurt somebody else if he brings in half-wit people that he's following, that's following him, and he's teaching them. I mean, I think they both should be prosecuted.
So attorneys told Janetta and her dad, Charlie, that they would take the case, but that they'd have to charge $100,000, $200,000 just to take it on. And even then, if they were successful, they might not even get that money back. The family also said that really it wasn't about the money and that they wanted him to pay, but not financially. They just wanted him to pay for what they felt he had done to their family member.
The wife was an angel. That, like I said, I figured she was an angel. And I put that together in a tribute to an angel. And that's why there's on there, the angels carried her away. And I figured that's a tribute to an angel. She was. But that's the way that is. Then I don't know. It's just something I wanted to do. I did it, and I'm glad I did it. And there's other people stop by and look at it, say it's pretty, but you're the first people with authority that ever did stop by. Anyway.
How long were you married?
How long was I married? 57 years. We went together 5 years before that. He was laying in there on a
Thank you.
hospital bed in the front room, in the family room. That's where she was. And she laid there so she could look out the window. And every day we could see her getting worse. She died in the film. And I had my hand on her belly when she took her last breath. And she took her last breath, I kissed her goodbye, and that was the end of it. And I like to think, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I am, that this doctor had a whole lot to do with her leaving here. Yeah, he stuck a needle in her lung. And I'm not saying he killed her, but I'm saying he had a whole lot to do with it. And that's all I can say. Now, she was on oxygen. She carried the thing on her. Anyway, she was on oxygen because she had COPD. And she was on oxygen for several years. And I went in there, and here she is. She's all laid up, trying to get up. She can't breathe. And here comes the doctor. He said, we pierced her life. I said, where is her oxygen? Oh. I said, get her oxygen. I was screaming. Then they went and got her oxygen. But they was going to let her sit there and choke to death. But they went and got her oxygen and put her back on it.
Both the Wilson family and Lauren told me that they want the same thing, to see safeguards in place so that this doesn't happen again. Laws surrounding pain clinics have changed drastically in the United States in the last 20 years, and Kentucky is no exception. A 2012 law established standards for pain clinics, defining them as a facility where a majority of patients receive treatment for pain. It requires that all pain management facilities register with the Kentucky Board of Medical Licensure, and physicians who prescribe controlled drugs to patients are required to complete special training in pain management. That registration is required annually, and if a new or different physician obtains ownership of the facility, they must file an amended registration with the board. The registration update for Advanced Pain Treatment Centers, filed on May 22, 2023, to change the owner from Gupta, occurred 10 days before Gupta's medical license was officially stripped in the state of Kentucky. Kentucky also passed a law in 2017 that limits the number of prescription painkillers that health providers can prescribe. Kentucky also passed a law in 2017 that limits the number of prescription painkillers that health providers can prescribe. Another safeguard is the CASPR system. Created in 1999, CASPR is used to track all prescriptions for a controlled substance for an individual patient. The system allows for real-time tracking, and 2012 legislation requires a healthcare provider to obtain a CASPR report on a patient to determine whether that patient already has a prescription from another provider before writing a new prescription for certain controlled drugs. But Gupta's attorney brought up that Kentucky's laws, or more specifically, the ones that don't exist, are exactly the point here. In his May response to the court filing, he wrote, "In the event that this board would like to directly control the activities of medical assistants in Kentucky, proposing statutory legislation on this subject or issuing a prospective administrative regulation on the topic are more appropriate vehicles than retrospective punishment of Dr. Gupta when there has been no violation of Kentucky law or breach of the appropriate standards of care." From what I gathered, Gupta left permanent marks on the patients he treated. Many of them said they are much more wary of the medical system and feel that they have suffered losses they will never recover from.
Yeah, anyway, I know she's not the only one that he has hurt, but he hurt her. And I'd give anything in the world, everything I got, to have about 15 or 20 years back together on my life, and have me out here in the backyard with Dr. Gupta. I would love to have 15 minutes with him in the shape I was 20 years ago. I'm not going to say no more about him, because you can't imagine how I hate that man. And I do. Because he had a whole lot to do with her dying. And I'm sure he's hurt other people. And if there's something I can do to keep him from hurting someone else, I'd love to be able to do it. If this little conversation we're having will help someone else, God love them.